Start with that top story. The EFF appears to have joined in on the Patriotic Alliance's battle against foreign-owned businesses and foreign workers in South Africa. PA members have been inspecting shops owned by foreigners in the township this week. Meanwhile, the EFF today checking on the ratio of foreign workers to local employees at various businesses, including restaurants. The Patriotic Alliance says it wants to send illegal foreigners home and, quote, put South Africans first. Both parties claim to be backed by the law. But what does the law say? Is there a quota for foreign workers? And are these inspections by the EFF and the Patriotic Alliance legal? Well, let's get some clarity now. I'm joined now by our Labour Minister, Thulas Nxesi. Minister Nxesi, thank you so much for joining us. I wonder if you could first of all just start by very clearly explaining what the labour law says about foreign workers. We know there's a scarce skills list. If you don't work in those scarce or critical skills, will you be denied a job as a foreigner in South Africa?
Thank you, Sally. The premise of our legislation is to protect all employees, irrespective of nationality, as long as the employment relationship can be defined. The same rights accorded to South African or to a South African employee, such rights apply to foreign national employees. This means that they are entitled to basic conditions of employment and all the prescribed things, including the minimum wage. And any employer who departs from that principle because the employee is a foreigner or a foreign national violates the laws. And currently, we are dealing with this matter in the face of the rising unemployment. There are initiatives at the level of government where we've listened to the concerns. And we are very soon, we are in the, what I would say, in the last stages of coming up with a policy proposal which must go to the public.
All right, so I really want to focus in on what the law says, because if you listen to Gayton McKenzie of the PA, he says, read the law. The law says that unless you're on that critical skills list, a South African should be holding that job. Is he right?
He is wrong, because the issue of the critical skills list is currently at the level of NEDLEC, where there's not yet an agreement amongst the social partners. It's a matter which was tabled towards the end of last year, and we are expecting that they are going to conclude it. And then we talk about that critical skills list. But remember, Sally, we as South Africa were part and parcel of the global system where we've signed a number of international conventions, where we're talking about the rights of the refugees, we're talking about the rights of migrant laborers. And unfortunately, we cannot respond on this matter in a populist or opportunist way to those frustrations
I hear you.
with the dangers of igniting xenophobia.
Absolutely.
But what we are saying, he is wrong to say there's a critical list, and which is still being finalized and discussed at the moment in NEDLEC.
So my understanding is that the last critical skills or scarce skills list was from 2014. Surely that's in place until this draft list replaces it. But never mind that, because we're not actually talking about critical skills. I mean, I think what Julius Malema and Gayton McKenzie, and particularly Julius Malema today, is getting at is, why is it seemingly easy for waiters and mine workers to get jobs, foreign waiters and to get jobs, when there are so many South Africans who are desperate for work? If there is this rule that South Africans have to be prioritised. So I ask again, what exactly does the law say around let me give you an example. If a foreigner sees a job advert here in South Africa, they apply for the job and they get offered the job by the company, can they get that job or can they not?
The foreigners are in two groups. They are legal foreigners.
I'm talking about legal. I'm talking about people who want to follow the rules, because we know the illegal situation I want to deal with later.
I must explain that. I'm trying to give you a context. They are legal foreigners. They are illegal undocumented foreigners. What the employers do in many of the industries is to want to take those desperate, illegal, undocumented foreigners so that they can be able to pay anything which is far below the prescribed standards. But a legal foreigner does have a right and have all the labor rights in South Africa as per our own law. Yeah. And our own constitution.
I got that, and you made that point well earlier. I suppose what I'm trying to get a response from you is what Julius Malema, for example, is saying. He wants to understand the ratio of foreign workers to local workers. And this, let's say this is in a completely legal situation. Do we have any ratios like that in place? Do we have a law that says we shouldn't really be employing kitchen staff or waiters who are foreigners if there's a South African who can fill that role?
No, we do not have such a law. That is why now we are busy dealing with how to regulate that particular issue. And we can tell you there are industries where, for instance, as you are saying, in the restaurants, you find that 90% in that industry, they've employed the foreigners. There are industries where 50%, some of them 70%, they've employed the foreigners. That's what we are trying to regulate and say we need to do a number of amendments in the legislation. And then on the basis of that, we can be able to put those quotas. We have done a lot of research to come up with this national labor migration policy so that we can allow the government to be able to regulate this employment of the foreigners. Otherwise, if we simply come and say and tell the employers that we cannot do that, and so it's illegal. But on undocumented and illegal, those people are violating the law. They are not supposed to do that.
I see. So those people, the semi-skilled workers, would have a general workers visa, and that would allow them to get a job as a foreigner, if I'm not mistaken. I want to get a comment from you on what KwaZulu-Natal Premier Sihle Zikalala said over the weekend, I think, that he supports the call, and he's calling on government to reserve general and semi-skilled jobs for South Africans. Do you support that call?
We definitely have a problem of massive unemployment, and we feel that we have to regulate this particular area. And we only deal in terms of importing the skills, those people, the skills which we do not have. But on the semi-skilled personnel, we think that there are many South Africans who can be able to have that. That's what we are trying to regulate in the country. It's there, it's happening in a number of countries where they say, and they've come up with the laws which are saying, if a national of that particular country can be able to do that job, you can't bring people from outside. So we are trying to deal with that particular matter. But what we cannot be able to do is totally exclude the people, because our constitution won't allow that. What we can be able to do is to regulate it and put the quotas.
All right. So in your view, does Julius Malema have a right to conduct the kind of visits he did today? Does he get your support in conducting such visits?
There are institutions which have been put in place which are dealing with such visits, and that is the mandate of the Department of Employment and Labour. And we know that the politicians can be very anxious to deal with the issues. They can be able to do their own observations, but it's important that they report those issues, those concerns, to any nearest office or Labour Department or office, and or a Labour Centre which is in that particular area. But to go there on their own, it might create problems, it might create confrontation, sometimes it might create violence, because there are certain protocols which have to be observed when people are visiting that. There's nothing wrong if we are visiting that. They also want to be observers and be part of us observing those processes and raising some of the issues. But to do that on their own, it's not in their mandate, it's in the mandate. Even if they are politicians, they have a right to get the information. But to say we've come to do the inspections, it's not on.
When did the Department of Labour last do an inspection of this sort to check up on illegal foreign workers?
The inspections are continuing in the different industries, and they take the different forms. Towards the end of last year, I can tell you we've had a number of blitz. And these blitz tend to be coordinated with the Department of Home Affairs, with the police, because we deal with a number of areas. We look at how people are complying with the basic conditions of employment. We look at whether people are illegal or, are legal or illegal. We look into a number of the issues. And we have done that. There have been a number of arrests which we have made in dealing with these issues. We have been dealing with this issue within the freight industry, with the truck drivers and so on, different industries in the retail and so on. We have done that. We have gone to the extent of adding 500 new inspectors in order to boost this issue of the inspection. The program is continuing, but the reality is we are dealing with more than 2 million employers in this particular country, and we have 1,000 inspectors in the different areas.
Before I let you go, I have to ask you a last question. You were making the point earlier how critically important it is that foreign workers are dealt with the same rights as South Africans, of course, foreign workers who are legally in this country. And clearly that framework, that global framework, is very important to the Labour Ministry. I want to ask you a little bit about a situation last year where Professor Mthunzi Ndwaba was put forward as a possible DG of the ILO, which is that's the International Labour Organization, part of the UN. And then about a month later, Cabinet withdrew their support for him. He expressed great surprise. A number of business organizations were completely surprised. I wonder if you could tell me, Minister, why support was withdrawn for Professor Ndwaba.
All I can tell you, what the Department of International Relations did was to submit all the papers prior to the closing dates and so on, but the matter was still subjected to the Cabinet for discussion to make the submissions in order that you beat the deadline. But the Cabinet, in almost all the candidates which they put, they do due diligence, they vet those candidates and come to their own conclusions, and they decide whether to support or not to support. But all I can tell you at this stage, government has done all those processes, and on the basis of those outcomes, they have not been able to say we can support this particular candidate. But I won't go into those issues because there are personal matters which I wouldn't like to discuss in the media.
All right, so you are part of Cabinet, so you are aware of those issues, will not divulge those issues. As you say, they are personal. Thank you very much for chatting to us this evening. That was Labour Minister Thulas Nxesi.